There are objects that carry history not in books or monuments, but in their very metal. Things you can hold in your palm and feel the weight of centuries. This is one of those objects. A gold coin. 4 pesos. Struck in 1868, in the waning years of a colonial empire that had held the Philippine Islands for more than 300 years. It is small. It is quiet. And it tells a story that spans 2 continents and 2 worlds. Look closely at the face of this coin, and you'll read a sentence that tells you almost everything about the age that made it. Isabel II por la de Dios y la const. Isabella II, by the grace of God and the Constitution, Queen of Spain. The inscription is more than decoration. It is a declaration. A queen's face pressed into gold and sent to the far edge of the world, reminding everyone who touched this coin, merchant, soldier, priest, or peasant, that Spain's reach extended even here, to these 7,000 islands in the Pacific. The date at the bottom reads 1868. A year that would prove to be almost prophetic. Because within months of this coin being minted, Queen Isabella herself would be forced from her throne in the glorious revolution back home in Madrid. A coin bearing her face, struck in the final chapter of her reign. The coin is gold, likely around 90% fine, alloyed with just enough copper to give it durability without sacrificing its gleam. It weighs approximately 6.77 grams. Small enough to close a fist around. Heavy enough to feel like something real. The craftsmanship is striking. The portrait of Isabella is rendered in clean, classical style, her hair swept up, laurel leaves woven in, the ribbon at the nape of her neck just visible. This was the aesthetic of European monarchical coinage at its height. Dignified. Imperial. Certain of itself. And yet this coin was made not for Madrid or Seville. It was made for Manila. To understand this coin, you have to understand what the Philippines was in 1868. Spain had claimed the island since 1565, when Miguel López de Legazpi established the first permanent Spanish settlement in Cebu. Within a few years, Manila had been founded, and the Philippines became one of the most important nodes in the entire global economy. For 2.5 centuries, the Manila galleon trade connected Asia to the Americas in a way that no other route could. Silver from the mines of Mexico and Peru flowed west across the Pacific to Manila, where it was exchanged for silk, porcelain, and spices from China and Southeast Asia. Merchants from across the world converged on Manila Bay. The city became a crucible of commerce. Chinese, Japanese, Indian, European, and Filipino traders all doing business in the shadow of the old stone walls of Intramuros. Gold was the language they all spoke. By the time this coin was struck in 1868, Spain's grip on the Philippines was still firm, but beginning to show cracks. The galleon trade itself had ended decades earlier. The islands had been open to international commerce. A new Filipino middle class was emerging, educated, ambitious, and increasingly impatient with colonial rule. A man named José Rizal was still a child in 1868. But the ideas that would one day animate the Philippine Revolution were already in the air. Into this world, charged, changing, teetering, came coins like this one. The 4-peso denomination was not the currency of ordinary people. This was money for landowners and merchants. For the Principalia, the local Filipino elite who had learned to navigate the Spanish colonial system. For the friars who administered vast agricultural estates. For the Spanish officials who moved through Manila's bureaucratic world with ledgers and quill pens. This coin passed through hands that shaped the fate of an archipelago. Where exactly was this coin made? That question is more interesting than it might seem. For much of the colonial period, the Philippines relied on coins minted in Mexico City, the great silver and gold production center of the Spanish Empire. But by the 19th century, as Spain's colonial grip loosened in Latin America and Mexico won its independence, the Philippines needed a more reliable local supply of currency. The Casa de Moneda de Manila, the Manila Mint, was established to serve that need. Philippine-issued coinage of this era carries the marks of its particular time, the transition from a purely colonial currency system to something more locally grounded, even as the face on the coin remained resolutely European. The gold for coins like this 4-peso piece came partly from local sources. The Philippine archipelago has rich mineral deposits, gold mining in Luzon, Mindanao, and the Visayas dates back thousands of years, long before the Spanish arrived. Indigenous Filipinos had crafted gold jewelry and ornamentation of breathtaking sophistication. The Laguna copperplate inscription, dated 900 CE, references gold transactions. The Surigao treasure, discovered in the 1980s, contains pre-colonial gold artifacts of astonishing artistry. Spain, in a sense, simply redirected a long tradition of Philippine gold into its own imperial currency system. The 4 pesos coin, sometimes called a 4 pesos, sat in the middle of the gold denomination structure. Above it were 10 peso and 20 peso pieces. Below it, smaller coins for smaller transactions. But the 4 peso piece was notable for its usability, substantial enough to represent real value, manageable enough to actually circulate. These were not coins made to be hoarded. They were made to move. The year 1868 was one of the most turbulent in 19th-century Spanish history. In September of that year, a naval uprising in Cadiz, led by Admiral Juan Bautista Tapete, ignited the glorious revolution. Queen Isabella II, whose face graces this very coin, fled to France. She would never return to Spain as its ruling monarch. This coin was therefore made in a year of endings. The monarchy that commissioned it, that pressed Isabella's profile into this gold, was about to collapse. Within months of this coin leaving the mint, the political order it embodied would be upended. Spain would spend the next several years lurching through provisional governments, a short-lived republic, and finally the restoration of the Bourbon monarchy under Isabella's son, Alfonso XII. But here in the Philippines, the upheaval in Madrid was distant. The rhythms of colonial life continued. Mass was said at the old stone churches. The ships came and went from Manila Bay. Farmers tended the rice fields. Merchants counted their coins. And then, just 3 years later, in 1872, something happened in the Philippines that would change everything. The Cavite Mutiny, a brief uprising of Filipino soldiers, was used as a pretext by colonial authorities to execute 3 Filipino priests, Mariano Gomez, Jacinto Zamora, and Jose Burgos. They became martyrs. Their names, Gamburza, became a rallying cry for the generation of reformers and revolutionaries who came after them. A coin struck in 1868 exists just on the edge of that transformation. Minted in the last years of relative colonial quiet, before the Filipino nationalist movement found its full voice. It is a coin from the last exhale before everything changed. Coins survive when so much else does not. Documents burn. Paintings fade. Monuments crumble. But gold endures. This coin has outlasted the queen whose face it bears, the empire that minted it, and the colonial order it once served. It has passed through hands we will never know, witnessed transactions we can only imagine. For numismatists, collectors and scholars of coins, Philippine colonial-era gold pieces like this one are among the most historically significant objects in their field. They are rare. The turbulence of Philippine history, revolution, war, occupation, liberation, means that relatively few have survived in good condition. This particular coin, the 1868 4 pesos gold piece, is in remarkable condition. The portrait of Isabella remains sharp. The inscription is fully legible. The milled edge is clean. It carries the particular warmth that only well-preserved gold has, not the harsh gleam of new metal, but something softer, richer, as if the years have settled into it and made themselves at home. Its value today is both intrinsic and historical. The gold content alone gives it a material worth. But for collectors, it is the story, the year, the queen, the colony, the moment, that makes a coin like this genuinely irreplaceable. The Philippines would gain its independence in 1898, after the Spanish-American War. Spain's long Pacific Empire came to its end in a matter of weeks, signed away in the Treaty of Paris. But long before that, someone, a merchant, a clerk, a landowner, a priest, held this coin in their hand. Felt its weight. Turned it over. Perhaps they looked at the Queen's profile and thought nothing of it. Perhaps they thought of everything. We cannot know. All we have is the coin. And sometimes, that is enough. You're watching Coin Legacy, where history lives through the coins that shaped civilizations.